Welcome to the Game Night High School Football Podcast, a weekly review of all the local high school football games set to be played this weekend. The Game Night Podcast is brought to you by Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get back out on the field. Now we turn it over to our hosts, sports editor Kurt Ritzman and lead sports writer Todd Hummel.
Welcome to Week 15 of our Game Night Football Podcast. I'm Kurt. This is Todd.
Hello. Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving.
Week 15, state semifinals week. But before we get into that, let's take a quick look at last week's quarterfinals. Let's dive in a little bit to Southern Columbia and York Catholic in 2A. It seemed early on that maybe York Catholic could make it a game with that quick touchdown to tie it up. At least from watching on the computer.
Well, it's one of those deals is, you know, you're going to have to keep scoring. And Southern kind of calmed down a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And, York Catholic kind of took advantage of their aggressiveness early with that screen. And there was a quarterback scramble for about 21 yards where as soon as he got past that first line, there wasn't anybody between him and the first down marker. Okay. And actually, I talked a little bit to Lear Quinton about that and what their defensive game plan was against York Catholic's screen game.
We knew what they were going to do. We were just all excited. So once that happened, we started calming down and just went from there.
When you guys are playing a spread team like this, does it put a little more pressure on you guys to kind of get a pass rush to take the pressure off the secondary?
Yeah, just because we want to get more people back in the coverage than usual.
Okay, so when York Catholic scored so fast to make it 7-7 early, did you think that it was going to be a game?
Yeah,
for a second.
Even into the early first quarter, just because of how it was raining, or late first quarter. Southern turned the ball over twice in that first quarter. But York Catholic never got its offense going after that, and they just couldn't hang with Southern athletically. That first touchdown, Julian Fleming ran a corner route to the end zone, and he was 6 yards past the defender when it happened. When Stone got him the ball, and once that, I think they stopped. I think York Catholic stopped Gage Garcia on the first play of the game for no gain, and I think there was a 1 or 2 yard gain on that first drive. And other than that, I don't think they stopped a running play by the Tigers until late in the game, and the second team was in. Gage was 10 carries for 186 yards, and Gavin had 5 for 106. So they were really clicking on all cylinders in that game by the time the second quarter rolled around, and that's amazing with the way that weather was on Saturday.
Those numbers are just crazy. Mike,
was it 633 yards, I think it was.
I thought
622.
622 on 46 plays.
Yeah.
And 2 were kneel downs.
Yeah, so that's over 10 yards.
Well,
I bet over 10 yards. I bet my math teachers probably wish I could do that a little better quickly in my head.
Mike Bullock wrote a sidebar for the game where 5 one-play touchdown drives, 10 plays over 15 yards and 18 plays over 10 yards. Just their quick strike ability in a state quarterfinal is almost unbelievable if you didn't see it every week.
Yeah, and they kind of did this to teams last year in the state playoffs too, where they really seem to be hitting their stride, and actually they seem to be hitting their stride late in the regular season, where they went on that string of 60-some point games and put 49 on a pretty good Danville team to end the season. And it's also probably the first game that I've seen that they've really gone to the passing game really early, and they really exploited hitting Julian early, deep, and they moved Preston Zachman, stuck him in a couple of times at tight end to hit him on some crossing routes. One of those went for 72 yards, and I talked to quarterback Stone Hollenbach if they had seen anything on the film about attacking York Catholic in the passing game.
I think Coach Ross just saw that we had better athletes than them really, so he just knew that we were going to get behind them because we had more speed and just more athleticism than them, and that's just what we went to. Obviously, the weather conditions weren't good, but I just had to put it up sometimes and let them run under it.
It's a little different formation too with Preston at tight end. That seemed to add a nice little wrinkle to things.
We've been adding a couple wrinkles. We did a lot of shotgun today. I feel like we would have done a lot more if the weather conditions were better. But we're changing everything up. My bad. Changing everything up. So, it's nice to. I feel like I was telling him. I feel like the offense at Southern's kind of evolved because we have a true passing attack now. We're more of a balanced offense. Coach Ross has always been a run-heavy offense, but we can throw the ball just as good as we can run the ball now. It's I feel like really just evolved our offense.
Okay, so Southern rolls. It was 56-7, finished up 56-23. Southern's the only team left in the Valley. It's the only Valley-adjacent team left, too. Last week, Halifax from the Tri-Valley League lost 28-6 to Lackawanna Trail in the Class 1A quarters, and Montoursville lost 45-7 to Scranton Prep in the Class 3A quarters.
A little surprised that it happened to Montoursville. I think Scranton Prep was maybe not as good as they were last year, and Loyalsock hung with them pretty tight for most of the game last year. What's interesting for Montoursville that the bulk of that team is are juniors, so they will be back next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they build on this season, and they got to be considered right now the super early favorite for the 2019 3A champion, and probably Division II of the Heartland Athletic Conference, and I think once Brock Grosser got hurt, nicked up pretty badly in that first game, that first win for Halifax over Muncie, that it was going to be tough for them. Lackawanna Trail, I think when I looked at it when I was doing the brackets for the paper, is up over almost 4,000 yards rushing.
Wow.
So they look like they, just from looking at some stuff online while they were playing, that they really wore down Halifax. And if you want to get a chance to see Lackawanna Trail, they're up at Danville in the semifinals against Juniata Valley, I believe.
Juniata Valley, Friday night, 7 o'clock. So if you're not headed to Southern's semi, which we'll talk about in a minute, at Northern Lehigh, and you're a high school football fan in the area, should be a good Class A semi at Danville Friday night.
Just from what little I know about Juniata Valley, it looks like they were a pretty good defensive team. I think 2 weeks ago they played a 9-3 game in District 6 semifinals. So I mean, I guess it's probably just a matchup of can you stop that trail running game, and what kind of and I bet Lackawanna Trail is pretty excited to get Southern out of Class A, because that's a Southern's Lackawanna Trail's run into a Southern a couple times in the Class A playoffs and have lost. So it'd be kind of neat to see a team that if you watch local news at all, probably see a lot on. So it'd be nice to see one of those teams make the state finals as well.
You have a prediction?
I'm going Lackawanna Trail just because I know maybe that much more about them than I knew Juniata Valley.
I'm going to skip that because my last prediction for a random game played at Danville, I picked the team that lost 34-0. So
was not a good choice.
We'll go with Todd's pick this time.
It happens sometimes.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Sun Orthopedics at Evangelical, and then we'll dive into Southern Columbia's state semifinal.
Whether it's time to live it up on the field or in the backyard, there's always time to play. The sports medicine team at Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical understands how important movement is to you and your family's life. With 4 convenient locations, the experts at Sun Orthopedics explore every treatment option available, from simple braces to advanced surgical techniques. They support you through the entire healing process, making sure you're back to being a warrior every weekend. Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get moving again.
Welcome back. Before we dive into, what you think's going to happen, what can you tell me about District 12 champion West Catholic?
So this is the 3rd time I think they've played a team for this area. They played Lewisburg, I think that would be in the semifinals in 2010, and won a pretty tight game. And then Southern beat them on the way to the state championship in 2015, again down at Northern Lehigh by pulling away in the second half. Actually, same coach for all 3 games. Brian Fluck has been there, I think, since 2002.
Wow! And
has rebuilt kind of a team a program that was pretty successful, back in the 50s in the Catholic League. Curtis Brinkley is their all-time leading rusher.
Okay.
Ran at Syracuse, played a little bit in the NFL. I don't know if this West Catholic team is quite as good as even these last 2 teams that have come around here. Especially now that they're going to be they're probably without their starting quarterback.
Wow.
who threw for Zaire Hart-Hawkins. He was near 2,000 yards when he got hurt against Dunmore 2 weeks ago. They've gone to Trey Williams. When I talked to Coach Roth yesterday, they throw a little bit less with Trey Williams, but they still throw. I think he threw 19 passes against who was it last week?
Richland.
Yeah, they beat Richland last week pretty easily, 35-7. And they also have a pretty good running game. They have 2 running backs up over 900 yards.
Okay.
Jasir Savoy, I think, had 183 yards and 2 touchdowns last week against Richland. He leads the team with 962 yards and 9 scores. And then fullback Zahir Booker has 905 yards and 9 touchdowns. And it's probably the first time, other than Mount Carmel, that Southern Columbia is probably going to be matched up a team that is fairly, maybe not as big as them, but is fairly large. They have a line they have a couple linemen that are 280. A guy that's their middle linebacker is also their guard, so they're a little smaller on the left-hand side of the line. And their best receiver is Seth Degree, has 38 catches for 679 yards, and Coach Ross said yesterday that that's probably where Julian Fleming is going to be for the bulk of the time on defense, is covering him.
What kind of offense do they run?
It's kind of like your Catholic, more of a spread type look, and more to run the ball now, especially since they have the backup quarterback in. But watching them a little bit on Huddle, some of the kids' Huddle tape. Sometimes more of a pistol set with either the tight end or the fullback right behind the center to run the ball and things like that. And Coach Ross said that they're I guess kind of like the Chiefs are. Chiefs like to do, run a lot of motion, and the Rams. I saw a couple plays where with a speed, a fake speed rush with a screen on the outside and just a fullback, and just a regular halfback, handoff off kind of different kinds of actions. So they'll kind of try and do that to Southern, and always when you go into these games, the big thing is can you hang with the Southern offense? And they're going to score on they're just so explosive. Even if they struggle, they're probably going to get at least 3 scores. And this defense has been, there's been a couple years in this run where the defense might they're younger. They were younger. The defense could have been had with some things, but these kids are juniors and seniors now, and this defense has been nearly impenetrable. I think they gave up 211 yards last week to York Catholic, and when you break it down, the first 2 drives was nearly 70 yards of that, and then York Catholic had 2 drives against the second team. Mm-hmm. So from between the second and third quarter, they allowed 20 yards and no first downs, and by the time. But when that happens, it really reminded me of the Dunmore game last year, where Dunmore was hanging around and got some breaks early, but Southern just kept scoring and scoring and scoring, and you turn, and all of a sudden at halftime it's 42-7, and you're in the mercy rule in the second half. So that's what West Catholic's going to have to avoid. Southern can be, we talked about that Danville offense, and Southern's kind of the original fast break offense, like we talked about, from the West Catholic game with those one-play drives. And maybe the scary part is Coach Ross said last week after that game that's the best this offensive line has played all year.
Wow.
And if that line's rounded into shape, 2 1,000-yard rushers, I think it's 2 1,000-yard rushers and a 1,000-yard receiver. Stone missed 4 games, and he's on. I think he's at 1,500 yards. They've thrown for almost 2,100 yards. It's going to test the defense, and you look at some of their scores. This defense from West Catholic has given up some points at times. Bishop McDevitt put 33 on them in a double OT game. Newman Goretti scored 20 on them. So they can be, if Southern stays consistent on offense, again, it's going to be hard for these teams to beat them.
So you don't anticipate Southern having any trouble on Friday night?
I'm a little less certain of that than I was last week. How's that? I think West Catholic has enough athletes to hit some big plays. That line's big enough that this could be one of those games where it's fairly close at halftime. But again, I just think Southern Columbia is playing so well offensively right now that the West Catholic's going to get worn down, and Southern's going to be able to pull away in the second half.
I don't even have a concept of how someone would go about stopping Southern's offense.
Well, honestly, the biggest thing is nobody has a matchup for Julian, and that's been the biggest difference in this run for them. Is when teams have been able, Mount Carmel has, at least 3 times, really controlled that running game for at least a half, and have been down because, as great as an athlete as Shane Widener is, as great as an athlete as some of those guys on the outside at Mount Carmel is Fleming is just a different level from everybody around here, and that's just that he's such a tough matchup. You read the story in the York paper, he had 5 catches for 147 yards? Yeah, 5 catches for 147 yards, and York Catholic, in theory, was playing bracket coverage, one guy close and one guy over the top, and, he was wide open on that first touchdown, and I think, people just forget how good of an athlete he is just because, at 6'4", it kind of looks like he's gliding out there, and it doesn't look like he's as fast as he is, but, anybody that saw that Danville game and has seen Peyton Persing run knows how fast Peyton Persing is. He's one of the top 100 runners in the district, and he got free against Southern in that first drive and didn't even make the red zone. Julian tracked him down by the 21-yard line. So it's just a different kind of athlete, and that makes the difference for them because it's a Division I kid with 6 other Division I kids, and that's for a school that size. A public school that's pretty hard to find, around the state in history, let alone, around, that you see often. And what the quote in the York paper from the York Catholic coach was, it was just a different level of team than we have seen it all this year. Because the York Catholic team was undefeated, and they made them look like, a bottom level Division III hack school,
Yeah. You'll have to remind me of the specifics, but just talking about Julian makes me think of that fumble in the state final last year that he forced the fumble.
Oh,
where he's running the wrong way, turns around, loops around like 3 guys, and catches the guy from behind, forces a fumble that kind of changed the momentum early in that game.
With a bad hip. Yeah, 6 weeks before he had a hip surgery. So, yeah, and that's just been the biggest difference. And, the other big difference is, Gage Garcia is a great running back and is tough to tackle, obviously, with all the yardage he comes up. But, Gavin, his brother Gavin, cheap plug alert, Gage and Gavin's going to be a feature story on Friday. But his brother Gavin, with his speed and the way that, gives them a kind of a different dimension in the running game that they didn't have last year, since Hunter Thomas graduated. And it's just the kind of offense that is really, really tough to stop. I guess that kind of goes without saying, but yeah.
Okay, so we're penciling Southern into the state final. Well, I'm penning him here. So the question is, who are they going to play? Got District 10 champion Wilmington with 1 loss, and District 7 champion Steel Valley also with 1 loss. The last 2 teams Southern played in the state final?
Yeah, well, this Wilmington team is I would guess not as good as they were last year. They had a couple seniors on the defensive side of the ball that graduated. Cam Merritt's back. Robert Pontius, the quarterback, is back. Been putting up some impressive offensive numbers. Steel Valley's kind of an interesting story. The first one of 7 teams I think I read in WPIAL history to have 2 1,000-yard rushers, and both their running backs are actually close to becoming to have 2 2,000-yard rushers, but 17 kids on the roster. Not a very big team. It's going to be interesting. I think, obviously when you play a team like that, the game plan is to wear them down, and Wilmington has that kind of running game. I think those 2 running backs for Steel Valley are pretty good, though. Steel Valley in a close one, maybe? But, I think there's a good chance, though, that Wilmington's offense would be, might be able to wear them down. But between those 2 running backs, Steel Valley looks to be pretty tough again this year. And I think if Southern quietly had to make a choice, I think they'd want another shot at Steel Valley. That's the only team that beat this crew of kids in their entire careers. Yeah. So I think they probably would like a little shot at Steel Valley. And maybe get a chance to show the Steelers that, what kind of difference 2 years can make. Again, can't look too far ahead though. Just got to make sure to take care of business on a Friday night. But that's something this Tigers team hasn't had much. Say what you will, for as good as they are, they have yet to take somebody so lightly that it's caused them issues into a fourth quarter. So we'll see how that goes. And like I said though, I think this Southern pulls away in the second half.
Okay, that was an interesting thing. Only loss. Like the Southern senior class, we talked about this a few days ago.
No, the junior class. Well, I guess the Southern senior class. Yeah,
the Southern senior class is 61-1.
Yeah.
With their only loss in the 2016 state final to Steel Valley. So, 2 wins away from a.
I'm trying to think. Is anybody else but Oak 6? I think Oak 6 is probably the only one that played in the first Berks Catholic game. I think he's the only freshman in that freshman class, in that current senior class that saw time as a freshman, because I can't think. Somebody got hurt and Oak had to play tackle for a little bit, and then ended up playing tight end in the state playoffs once that kid came back. Yeah,
that's something we'll investigate next week.
There you go.
Okay, so make sure to pick up Friday's paper for feature on the Garcia brothers, game preview, Todd's column and picks. Saturday's paper for coverage of the state semifinal. Todd and Mike Bullock are going to Northern Lehigh again, and then Monday we'll have a notebook.
Yeah,
with some interesting tidbits that didn't make it in the 2 stories from the game. We'll be back here next week, hopefully for a Week 16 state final preview. If not, we'll be here, wrap up the season, maybe talk a little bit about some winter sports coming up.
Goodbye.
All right, thanks for watching.
I was waiting for you to say
I thought you had something to add. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys.
Whether it's time to live it up on the field or in the backyard, there's always time to play. The sports medicine team at Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical understands how important movement is to you and your family's life. With 4 convenient locations, the experts at Sun Orthopedics explore every treatment option available, from simple braces to advanced surgical techniques. They support you through the entire healing process, making sure you're back to being a warrior every weekend. Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get moving again.